Have you ever tried to figure out how God's going to answer you or what the next steps are going to be? And you're thinking, okay, he's probably going to move through these people, this circumstance, this channel, these finances are going to come in from this area. And you kind of have it all mapped out of how he's going to answer you. And do you notice that he usually doesn't do any of what you thought? It's entirely different. And he moves through different people that you didn't even see or different circumstances that you never saw coming. He's just like that. He usually doesn't do the same thing twice. And if you'll notice in the New Testament, if you watch the way that Jesus handled people and what he did, even healing, he didn't heal the same way twice. Like sometimes he would speak to the disease. Sometimes he would just lay hands on them. Sometimes the people went after. He wasn't even talking to the people, and the people went out, and by faith, just, the lady that grabbed the hem of his garment, she's like, I'm going to be healed today. There's all these different circumstances, so many different ways. And we have to realize that the Lord usually does things different every time because he wants you to trust him. If he was just somebody that this is the way he always does it every single time, it would require no faith, no trust. And the relationship he's not a robot and he's not a formula. You can't be like, okay, well, God did this and this for me, so therefore he's going to do this for me now. He's just not a formula. He's after relationship. So I've got an example for you. I lived with my cousin. We had an apartment together, and then she ended up getting married. And I had a knowing in my spirit that I was going to move. I was going to move to a smaller place, somewhere where I could live by myself. And so I just had this knowing, and I started packing up boxes because it was like, well, I'm going to be moving, so I might as well start packing. And so I had all these boxes by the door. And people were like, oh, where are you moving, Nancy? And I was like, I don't know. I just am. Like, I just knew I'd be moving soon. So I just had everything ready. And sure enough, God had it all worked out. And I got into this basement apartment, and it was just very peace-filled. And I knew that that was the right spot at the time. Well, fast forward like a year later, I thought I was only going to be there for like 1 year. It was going to be a nice transition place before the next townhouse or something. And so I thought, well, you know what? The last time that I moved, I started packing boxes, and this is what I did last time. So I bet you God's going to do it the exact same way. Yeah, whatever. I should have maybe thought on that a little bit more. So I start packing my boxes. I start stacking them against the wall and getting ready to move. And it did not work. I tried to move. I tried to get out of there. And every door was shut, every apartment didn't work. It wasn't happening. I had to unpack all of these boxes, put everything back the way it was, and be content. So then fast forward like another maybe year or two, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to be in a basement anymore. I'm going to move. And I decided that. It was not the Lord. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start packing again. So I did. Yes, I did it twice. I packed up all the stuff that I wouldn't normally use on a regular basis, put it all in the garage. I thought, okay, now I can move, right, Lord? And I pushed him. For 5.5 years, I was in that basement apartment, just not understanding that God did not give clearance to leave. And until he gives clearance, you shouldn't go anywhere because it won't work. And I just got so frustrated. Push, like, God, you're going to do it. You're going to, let's go. I'm going to use faith to believe you that you're going to do this. When in reality, I had 4 major financial things come up in one solid year that if I would have been anywhere else, I wouldn't have been able to handle them. I wouldn't have been able to cover the cost of them. And God knew that ahead of time, which is why he had me in that 1-bedroom basement apartment. So there are things that we need to inquire of the Lord about. There are things that we need to talk to him about. And this is just one example, but I mean, you talk about healing or something. Sometimes he tells you, go to the doctor. And sometimes he tells you, completely stop this medication over here, but you have to be directed of him because it's most likely going to be different for every single person, which is why it's so important that you hear the Lord on everything that you do so that you don't end up, going around the same mountain all the time like I did. And also there's a story in 2 Kings chapter 5. You guys should read it. It's a guy named Naaman. Naaman had leprosy and he needed healed, obviously. And he hears that there's a prophet in the land. His name is Elisha. Before Jesus, anybody that heard from the Lord, it was generally the prophets that did it. And then the people would go to the prophet and the prophet would tell them what the Lord said. So Naaman goes to the prophet, shows up at his front door, and Elisha sends a messenger down to tell him the directive from the Lord. And the directive was to go wash in the river Jordan 7 times, like dip yourself under 7 times and you'll come up healed. Well, Naaman got really upset, and you can read the verse and he starts out with, I thought the prophet was going to come down, he was going to call in the name of the Lord, he was going to wave his hand, and I was going to be healed. And that's the way he had pre-planned in his head about how God was going to heal him. Therefore, he was just furious. He's like, I don't want to go wash in the Jordan River. The Jordan River's dirty. There's a couple other rivers that are nice. Why can't I bathe in that? Why can't I go over to those rivers? That wasn't the direction of the Lord. And so the servants go up to Naaman and they, work on him a little bit. And they said, just do it. Just do it. And so he goes to the Jordan, and sure enough, after the 7th dunking in the muddy river, he comes up healed. So in your life today, what are you pre-planning for God? What have you already set in motion? What have you already ran ahead of him on? And he's like, hey, trying to get your attention, I need you to do this one little thing over here. And you're like, that can't be the answer. And you try and do all these other things over here, and he will always come back to, I would like you to do this thing over here. It's all about obedience. It's all about yielding yourself to doing what he's asked of you to do. And so I encourage you to not make up plans, not make up ways that the Lord can do that and be like, hey, Lord, you should do it this way. You will just save a lot of time and stress and sleepless nights by just asking the Lord, just inquiring of God and saying, God, is this something that you want me to do? And remember, it probably won't ever be the same thing twice, the same way twice. He's just different. He works through relationship. He works through one-on-one communication. He works through you spending time with him and him leading you in ways that you've never seen. And he delights in your faith in him. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. So ask him before you go and pack up half your house. Ask him before you make the doctor's appointment, or before you take the certain pill, or before you text somebody something that you think that they should know. Hang on, just give yourself a moment to actually let God into the situation, and he will lead you and direct you and guide you in the way that you're supposed to go. It'll just be better. So I'm sure you all have a story where you've thought that God was going to do something over here and it was like, what? This thing over here? So anyway, just be open to him and know that he loves you and he cares about you. And even if you do miss it, he will be there to pick you back up and keep you going.